right, here we go. All right, well, welcome to host orientation for our spring session of After School STEM Academy. We're really excited for this spring because it is going to be our very first all in-person offering for all schools, for all volunteers and students and teachers since the pandemic. Or since the pandemic started, I guess I should say. So we're just really excited to kind of be all as a group coming back together in real life and in person. To begin with, before we get started, I'd just like to acknowledge that we are on the homeland of the Coast Salish people, and it is with gratitude that we recognize the tribes of this area and that it is their land that we're on. And you see we have a little map graphic right there, and it's a really cool interactive map. It'll show you all of the places of different tribal communities that are in our Puget Sound area, and we have so many. So you can see, even if I'm here in Shoreline, you might be up in the Marysville area or down south in Kent, and we have different communities to honor and be grateful for. All right, and if I haven't said it yet, I don't think I might have. Just want to say thank you. We know y'all have so much going on. It's been a crazy year, maybe in some ways just as crazy as last year was. So that you're taking time out to bring After School STEM Academy to your students, we just have an immense amount of gratitude. And at any time you need our help, please reach out. All right, so this is some housekeeping, some general things about WALDS and After School STEM Academy. I'm sure you probably know a lot of this information. This is one of the reasons I'll go through it pretty quickly because you've already signed up and you're bringing it to your students. But our mission here at WALDS is that we're a collaborative of school districts and industry leaders that leverages resources, talent, intellectual capital to help 250,000 students graduate career and college ready. Our lens on equity, diversity, and inclusion is that we're addressing systemic racism that creates disparities in education. We're committed to equity, diversity, and inclusion, which requires that we use our collective voice to identify and eliminate institutional barriers that deny equitable access and impact the success of Black, Indigenous, and people of color and other underserved students. Skip over that one quite a bit, y'all. So as we are going through After School STEM Academy and reviewing it, it's just important to know that when we're creating every session, when we're creating the curriculum, when we're making tweaks, we're always doing it from this lens. All right, what is ASSA? That's our acronym. You hear us use it or see it written on quite a bit, but it's a four-week hands-on program for elementary age students. And the whole goal of it is to spark their general interest in STEM and STEM learning, learn a little bit about STEM careers, and help them start engaging in the engineering design process to apply it to problem solving in their everyday lives. And then, of course, to build their 21st century skills of communication, collaboration, creativity, and critical thinking that we know employers are looking for in their workforce today and in the future. Our program goals for After School STEM Academy is that we are able to provide high quality, no cost, career connected learning opportunities, which prepare students to succeed in the global economy. We're building their 21st century skills by working directly with industry and community partnerships for all students, particularly those impacted by systemic racism and those furthest away from educational justice. All right, a little bit about the roles. Most of you here today are familiar with After School STEM Academy. You've participated in the past, and you kind of know a lot about what we're doing. And you know a little bit more about the challenges we've had this year. This is the traditional model. This is when we have an industry volunteer come in and they act as your primary facilitator for all of the activities that you're doing over those 4 weeks. They share their personal connections about their pathway to getting to the jobs that they have today. And they talk to the students about how to support their own STEM interest and their STEM learning. Miraculously and amazingly, so many of you educators are going to be doing that and the school host session manager role this spring, because we have just had a hard year recruiting volunteers. So another thing we really want to thank you for is that you are stepping up and acting as both the facilitator and the school host, many of you during this session. And then if you do have a volunteer, those are going to be their roles. And then you as the session manager at your school, you help them out with the classroom, support them on the activities that they need, and help them navigate the classroom behaviors or any issues they have with the computers and things like that. Just because they're not familiar with classrooms, they have limited experience in classrooms beyond their own education. So anything you can do to sort of lend that educator lens to them is really helpful. All right, our logistics for our spring session is it starts on May 9th and it will run into June 17th. And you can pick any 4 weeks along that time. The sessions are an hour and a half now. When we switched from 6 weeks to 4 weeks, we went to an hour and a half and up to 24 students per session. This spring's curriculum is called Liftoff. It's Rockets and Rovers. It is a curriculum that we have used in the past for After School STEM Academy before the pandemic. You'll notice a few changes if you have used Rockets and Rovers in the past. This one has a few new tweaks to it. Again, listening to your feedback in previous surveys of when we've used this curriculum in the past and just things that would be more engaging and more interesting. We tweaked the curriculum a little bit to make sure we include that feedback. Our supply kits. So we've done a few things between last year and this year to just find the best way to get the supplies to who needs them or when they need them. We had tried giving them directly to the school so the volunteers didn't have to worry about coordinating. And we heard from a lot of the volunteers, and honestly, we heard from a lot of educators that either the volunteer wasn't quite prepared for their very first session when they didn't have access to the kit beforehand, or we heard from the volunteers that they didn't have a kit before the first session and they were just kind of lost themselves and using a lot of that first session to kind of get ramped up, which we don't want them to do. We want them to be ready to start the activities from the moment the kids are there with them on the very first session. So if there is a volunteer for your session, we are coordinating to get the kits directly into the volunteer's hands. We've been doing that all week. We have like 1 or 2 volunteers that still need to pick up their kits. If you do not have a volunteer assigned to your session, we have already delivered those kits directly to your school. So you should have them in your mailroom. If you haven't got a note from the office yet, look for it. It's a medium size, not a medium size, it's a small size moving box, and it will have your school name and your name on it. All right, so you've registered, you're here, and talking a little bit about what to do when you're in your sessions or as you're getting ready for your session. So we do say, you know, you're our access to the students. So you're going to recruit students. You got about a couple of weeks, so you can start doing that now. The sessions are really great if we can have about a 10 student minimum. We've seen them run a little bit smaller, but the small groups in person really work well with about a 10 student minimum. If you have an opportunity, even as just the session manager, to review the facilitator guide and click through the adventure slides, the PowerPoint presentations for each session, that could really help you just have some general framework of what the volunteer should be doing each week. And then talk about how you want to share the slides. If the volunteer is going to come with their own computer, if you're going to use one in your classroom, that kind of thing. And then ensure that you just have a moment to check in with your volunteer as soon as possible, get their background check started. We know that everybody coming back to volunteer in schools this spring has meant that that process is getting a little backed up for everybody across all districts. So if you can get them started as soon as possible, that would be great. And then also, just before your session starts, to send a reminder to your students, and please send a reminder to your volunteer. All right. And then when you're connecting with your volunteer, again, check in with them about getting their background check done, confirm the schedule, make sure that the schedule you have is the schedule that they have, and ask about any conflicts that they might have, any travel plans or things like that that might come up, and see if you can schedule around it. I know a lot of teachers like to see if maybe they can schedule a separate day during a week or schedule a different week and still have their volunteer present. Okay, and so our volunteers, they've actually already done their training. They did their training on Tuesday, so they do an online training similar to this. They need to connect with you. They need to do the background checks, provide COVID vaccination as required by your district, facilitate all the sessions, and ultimately get to know the students and connect and have fun. And the things you can do to support your volunteers is that we know that the kids are really going to benefit from getting to experience the volunteer story and learning their pathway. But we also know that the volunteers themselves, since they're not educators, they do different things during their day jobs, but they don't all come with the same level of facilitation skills and comfort working with students. So use your hat and your skills to know that if you see a little stumbling blocks, just be a supportive resource and a guide to wherever you feel like you can best support your volunteer. You're going to know that for your classroom the best. Okay, this next section is really about STEM learning and social emotional learning in STEM. I will say I'm going to go through this much faster than I go through it with our volunteers. We want to give you an opportunity to see it, but in truth, you could probably teach this to me better than I'm going to teach it to you. So I'll ping through this one pretty quickly. All right, this is the habits of mind chart that we share with the volunteers about social emotional learning. We teach them to think about thinking and feeling and doing and using these bullet points in the chart to talk about ways to engage with students. And we do that by having them structure the elements of the chart as a tool for discussion, questions, encouragement, and extension activities. So that habit of persistent learn from failure, what it looks like in a question is, what other strategies, what strategies did you use? What strategies could you use when your design's not working? Or just admiring how you keep going, you're trying so many things after your first design, and listing the ways in which the design failed, and using that to plan for the next improvements they're going to do, because the engineering design process is all about iteration. So those habits of mind charts just give our volunteers some language and some tools to use when they want to engage in some social emotional reinforcement with students. And there's just the places that we know that SEL impacts, the STEM's impact in SEL, and how it's just like integrates into all of the other places of our lives. And this is how we know that the 5 CASA competencies that are really sort of individual focused, that they are integrated into those 21st century skills that our goal of our program is to really help reinforce and develop in students, because we know that the workforce is looking for them. And if they don't have strong self-awareness, self-management, social awareness, relationship skills, and responsible decision-making, those other things get harder to do when they're working in groups. Okay, and this is a little bit of what maybe you can use to prompt if a volunteer isn't as comfortable sharing their own personal story, just some questions you might want to ask them that could kind of get them starting to think about the kind of things that they would want to share with their students. We also, something that's kind of new to this session, the very beginning in the first session, we have, instead of doing introduction as part of that first activity, there is some set aside time that we really are prompting the volunteers to do an icebreaker, to get to know the students, less about the STEM activity and more about just taking a little bit more time to connect. And in there, we've asked them to sort of build in telling their story, the things that they feel comfortable talking about. All right, and just a summary of all of that stuff is that ultimately we're looking for the facilitators to be a guide and not the answer givers. We want them to really let the students question their ideas, ask questions, figure out stuff, let them try it when they know that it's not going to work, and remind us everybody that doing STEM and doing engineering is more about process than the result. That we probably have more than one solution to getting a challenge solved, and sometimes there just might not even be a good answer at that time. So ultimately, going through the process and the journey and just having a good time with it. The next, I will stop the screen, show you another one where you can find the session resources. You'll have the curriculum the PowerPoint presentations, and there is a student recruitment flyer on our website that you can download and edit for your program and your school. And then also there is, of course, a supply kit. These are all online. In the supply kit, you'll have paper versions of the curriculum, and on our website, you'll find electronic versions. And that is the pathway on our website, how you can find it. I'll show you real quick. Okay. So you've been to our website to register for After School STEM Academy. If you go to student, or sorry, not students, if you go to teachers, right there in the top, that first hyperlink, the Spring Curriculum Resources page, down below it is the downloadable recruitment flyer. If you click on it, the password was sent to you in your email. If for some reason you don't have it, please reach out to me and we'll get it to you. But you'll see right here, there are the slides. This is a drive of all 4 sessions, the educator guide, the student journal, and there is an optional activity in this curriculum, especially good for grade levels of maybe 4 or 5 and up. So that's 4 through 6, where they can use an altitude tracker. And there is a template, there are copies of the template in the curriculum to build your own altitude trackers so the students can measure the altitude of their rockets when they're doing the activity. But that is optional. You can add it to the curriculum with ease, or you can just bypass it. But we think some of them might get a little messy as you're doing it. So there's just a place for you to get another copy of it if you need it during your session. And I'll go through each session, but I quickly want to just show you, we heard that this is one of the things we didn't do in the fall was offer slide presentations for the in-person activities, but we had done it in the virtual program that we did in winter, and we had done it in the virtual program we did last year. And we had heard from our volunteers that they missed having these sort of ready-built slides. So we went ahead and created some slides for each of the sessions. They're not nearly as in-depth as they were for the virtual, because the students aren't going to want to look at the slide presentation with the same intensity that they need to look at it to do the virtual successfully. So it'll have a title page. This is where you'll find the copy of the engineering design process poster. There's one in the student journal, but for displaying to the class. This is where you'll find it. There's always words to know, just new vocabulary words that are important to their session. And you'll see that there is a audio file embedded into this file, and that's the mission. And so it's going to review the mission for the students. And then if there's any videos for any of the sessions, they're also embedded into the file. Sorry, didn't mean to start that. And then this one had some graphics. There's I keep calling them file, I'm sorry, a slide about building.
It's always exciting that you're going to work.
Good to know they work. A reflection slide. And then there are a few timers. I'll show you how come out. There is a 20-minute timer, a 10-minute timer, and a 5-minute timer. The volunteers let us know that it was helpful to have these sort of ready built into the classroom, and some classrooms already actually use them. So we just went ahead and added them to the slides. And so all of the slides for each 4 sessions follow that model. All right, and this is just a quick review of what the students will be doing each week, and a quick summary snapshot of any of the prep time that there might be, and the number of videos or audio files you might be looking for, and if there's any reusable supply items that they're going to need to use from week to week. So we said that we left a lot of place for the icebreaker and sharing about the career path and things like that. And then they're going to build a rocket that is still on its launch pad, and it's going to hold up a rover, which is a stuffed animal. So if you've done the tower build before, it's similar to that. It just has a rocket theme. And the prep time there is not necessarily needed, but it's helpful to create those little mini kits for each little group that's going to build their rockets. Session 2 is the first time they're going to use the Stomp rocket launcher. And so we've said, if you can't be outside, try to be outside. If you have a big hallway or the gym or the cafeteria or any place you can use for testing that just gives them at least 40 feet of launch space. They're going more in length than in height, but they're going to want to practice all of it. So any big space that they can use for testing their rockets would be helpful. And then in session 2, they're going to use that Stomp rocket launcher for the first time and start testing all the different variables that happen when they're building their rockets. For session 3, they're going to build a little rover. And this is one of the things that changed. If you have done rockets and rovers in the past, the students built the rover and picked out tools and things that they would need to accomplish the mission on whatever planet or moon they chose to do. And then this one has an additional challenge of there is a little mini motor and a battery as it kind of makes the rover buzz around. Sounds like a little bumblebee. And the students are going to try to take a space rock, which is a ping pong ball, across the table. So navigating their rover in a line with the ping pong ball attached to the rover. And so there's a cup in the curriculum and stuff like that for them to use to try to do that. And then to wrap up and be done, they're going to take all the things that they learned about all of the different variables from session 2, apply those to session 4. They're going to add the weight of everything that they did when they were building their rover, can combine all of those things and try to get their rockets to their destination. I'm sorry, I don't know why I did that. I think I got excited about something. Go back, see what's next. Oh, well, that might be why I did it. Okay, so I don't have anything else to share. If you have any questions, please, now is a great time. If you need to hop off or go do anything, I am going to be on vacation next week, but I will be back on May 2nd. In that time, Van's going to be here. Ira's going to be here. You'll be able to get to them through my out of office message. Van's email is also right there and in the slide presentation. So if you have any questions as you're getting started and preparing for your very first session, please reach out to us. I will be back on May 2nd, the week before all of our sessions begin. So I can help you at that time if it's something you can wait on. All right. I'm going to stop sharing. Does anybody have any questions? I recognize most of these names, so I recognize all the names, but I recognize a lot of these as veterans. So I know you're kind of waiting. You know what to do. Probably do it yourself. All right. Well, if you don't have any questions for me, I will be here tomorrow. If you think of something, by all means, please reach out. And Ira and Van will be in good shape for you next week. And then I'll be back on the 2nd.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Have fun on your trip.
Thank you.